Hello, how's it going, everybody? I'm Shane with Command Point, and I'm here with my co-host Ryan Clancy. How's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah, it is the 23rd of September. It is a warm night in New York, and we are here to talk about what we talk about every time.
It's Kill Team.
Kill Team. You already knew.
I got a list here.
A list?
I got a list of the do's and don'ts of Kill Team. Things that
the
you
nevers
should
and always?
The nevers and always. That's what I had written on the list, but I don't think nevers is a word, but I don't know if do's is also a word.
I don't think I've ever used do's in a sentence outside of do's and don'ts.
You've never said do? Yeah. Okay. So
when would you say do's?
At least there's a precedent. Is there a precedent for nevers? No, I don't think so.
Nevers.
I don't think I have never heard of someone say nevers. So,
yeah, we're going to talk about that, things that you should always do and things that you should never do in Kill Team.
Yeah.
You have a list. Do you want to just get right into it? Is there anything?
Actually, before we get into the list, I want to take this time and formally present Lues with the Legion of Chad Award. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure there's a lot of you, the Legion of Chad Award is something that we bestow upon our community members on the Discord.
Yes.
So Lues was gracious enough to translate the Ibericon packet from Spanish to English for us so that we can run our Ibericon tournament, which is starting this Saturday, September 26th, I believe.
And he's also made a lot of the maps that we've used on TTS.
Yeah.
He's helped us out in a ton of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great player.
He's a great player. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the list. So Shane has not seen this list yet.
Nope.
So
I'm coming in blind.
Yeah,
I'm going to hear this the same time. Well, this isn't live, but of course. But I'm going to be hearing.
You'll get his live reaction.
Yes, that's what I'm going for.
So I'm just going to go down the line, and then Shane and you'll just riff off these. All right.
I can't wait.
All right. So first one I have. Never ready a model in the movement phase when you have initiative.
It depends on the deployment. But I think a lot of the time, I think you could argue that that's usually not a good idea. There are certain instances where, say, you've deployed a model, a shooting model facing an objective in a relatively safe spot, and you really know that you don't want to move up with it because it's not a melee model and your opponent might be a melee team, and you're comfortable just readying and saying, you're pointing a gun at an objective and saying, don't go here or I'm going to shoot you. But yeah, I think on a lot of the more dense boards, and especially on like Arena or something, obviously, you don't want to be readying a lot of the time with initiative. I mean, it's already hard enough to get shots off when you have initiative.
Yeah, right. Okay. Always protect your leader.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
the way I look at the leader is, bar like the LVO 2021 pack, because there's some play with the secondary objectives that you can get. What I mean by that is like not making your leader like a frontline like combat unit, basically.
Yeah.
Just so kind of have them just to like farm CP and then just keep them protected like you would like a king in chess, basically.
Yeah. This is more of a rostering decision, really. Is you don't want to be putting your expensive toys on the leader if you can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a thing where you're building a list, and maybe you clock out at like 123, and you can throw a couple extra points in the leader. That's fine, but there's a reason that for several years the main strategy involving leaders is put it on a cheap guy and hide him.
Yeah,
because CP it's a huge part of this game. And the game becomes much harder when your leader dies turn 1 or turn 2. Turn 3 or turn 4, maybe you can throw them out there if you need to, but at that point, especially turn 4, I mean, it literally doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Turn 3, it's still pretty inconsequential, largely. But yeah, especially turns 1 and 2, protect your leader, keep them out of harm's way.
Always screen your backfield if your opponent takes models in reserve.
Yeah. Especially if there's like positionals that
positional secondaries.
Positional secondaries that involve like if there's a recon sweep or something, you don't want to just let them in. I mean, that's a good idea, I guess.
Yeah.
Don't let them deep strike behind you, especially if it's like a shooting, like a Melta or something, or like a Mandrake. You don't want that. You don't want to have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, reserves are hard to play around, but do what you can, I guess.
Yeah. Never supercharge a non-sniper specialist plasma gunner.
I think you can get away with this one. You can. So, well, obviously, there's the fringe examples, like if, like with a guard, you can, with Imperial Guard, you have the voice command, you tell them to reroll ones.
Right.
So, I guess you could change it to don't supercharge if you're not rerolling ones. But even that, I think you can make an argument. Like, I know that there was like a legitimate strategy with like the old Imperial Guard plasma spam, where you just have so much plasma on the board.
It's like if one of them accidentally blows themselves up, it's not really a detriment to you.
Yeah. In fact, you could go another one on plasma and say always slow roll overcharged plasma.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason not to, because if the first shot hits and goes to the injury roll, you don't have to resolve the second shot, which could potentially, be a 1 and kill you.
Right.
So there's literally no benefit to rolling all of your plasma shots at once if they're overcharged. It can only hurt you.
Yeah. Always hide your melee models behind line of sight blocking terrain.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it sounds pretty obvious, but it's like, is there ever an instance that you could see yourself not doing that?
I mean, if you can't, and there's like on a lot of these boards, there's like an objective in the middle and there's not always any terrain there.
Right.
Also, if it's more benefit, like say you're running a very durable guy who you don't think is going to die, sometimes it's more beneficial to just get as close as possible.
Right.
Like a custody, maybe you don't have to worry too much about cover. I mean, it's unlikely they're going to do anything to you anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well just get as close as you can. Make that charge next turn easier.
I think this is a good one. Never contest a decisive move when you could instead decisive strike.
Okay, the decisive move, decisive strike game is really complicated, and it took me forever to like actually start to grasp when it's better to do which like certain things. So if there is an instance where like say you're I don't know, you win initiative and your opponent has like a melee model near a big clump of your guys and they decisive move, you might not have a choice but to contest it, because even if you can decisive strike, that one model might be locking up a lot. Like if your opponent can charge like 4 guys and stop them from doing anything, you might want to decisive move and then charge that guy. Because then at least chances are neither of you can decisive strike anyway at that point, and you have initiative.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's the thought. But if it's just 2 guys, like
if it's just like mono-y-mono,
then don't bother.
And you have the CP for it, decisive strike.
Unless you have 3 CP, then you can decisive move, I guess, if you really want. But even then, you might as well save it.
It's like there's something else you can use for that. Always mark your remaining command points and the victory points you have accumulated down on something, whether it be a piece of paper or a dry erase board, or I guess a chalkboard or something. I don't know. Carve into the table if you must. Do not rely solely on dice. And you know how like people keep track of like victory points and stuff like that just with dice?
Oh yeah.
It's just they get knocked
Yep.
And it's just you can't track what points you accumulated when.
Yeah, I like the
With
thing
dice.
that I like the thing that you do where you have like that whiteboard.
Yeah.
Like you have this mini, I guess for the listeners, there's like this mini whiteboard that Ryan has. It's like really small, but he brings it to like the game store back when that was a thing.
Remember when?
And like there's plenty of room on it to like write the score and like the victory, keep track of the victory points and
Keep track of your secondaries.
Command points, stuff like that. It's cool.
Yeah. Always double check the range of your aura abilities. So things like your comm specialist, if you have an auspex, your voice of command, before you finish moving those consequential models.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking about this yesterday actually because sometimes I test things a little too much and I just let that be the judge, and I'll just assume. And I'm usually like I've played the game enough that I've got a pretty good feel for it. But sometimes you mess up.
Yeah.
And you think your guy was 6 inches away, but he's 6.1. And you want to avoid that. The only thing I'll say is make sure you're not projecting to your opponent like what your thoughts are, like what your plans are a little bit.
Yeah.
Like if your opponent's in the middle of moving a guy and they stop the model somewhere, but they're like still clearly unsure, don't take that brief moment to start measuring for the distance, because then they're going to see that.
Don't be pre-measuring when your opponent is moving. That's a dead giveaway.
Wait until they're done, and then you can go to town.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And on the other side of that,
yeah,
if you have finished moving a model and you see your opponent start measuring, don't rewind the clock.
Yeah,
don't be that guy.
Yeah,
don't see intent and then decide, oh no, that's not what I want to do.
Actually, what I was going to do was no.
Yeah, that's the worst. Don't be that guy.
No. Never bring a super competitive list to a casual game. It's just,
I don't know.
What?
Do whatever you want.
What do you...
People, hey, listen, people have different ideas of what's fun.
All right.
People like to have, some people, their form of fun is they just want to bring like a meta list and
all right.
go to town.
Well, if you're playing against a guy who just wants to play kill team.
Sure. I mean, yeah, if you're teaching a new guy, don't bust out the drone spam.
Yeah, don't bust out like Drakari anything. Like, yeah. That's what I mean by that.
But yeah. I mean, ultimately, as long as just don't be a dick, right? Like as long as both players are having fun and you're not like I see a lot of people, not necessarily in kill team. I haven't seen it too much because we're kind of the guys that teach people the game at our area. But like you see people all the time in like tabletop games where a new guy walks in, they want to learn how to play, and the person's like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you," and then they proceed to just annihilate the new player.
Yeah. And then the new player is walking away like, "Is this the right thing for me?
Yeah,
is this the right game?"
That guy's the worst.
Am I stupid?
Yeah,
I don't understand. Yeah, you don't want people walking away from the game thinking that. That's not the way to teach a new player. At a tournament, always have your roster available for your opponent to view. So like have copies of your tournament roster that you can hand out. And a lot of tournaments require this of you bringing copies of your
you got to do
of that. Of your roster. Always discuss line of sight rules before the game begins.
For sure.
With your opponent.
For sure. Yeah. You don't want to have that conversation in the middle of the game.
It's like, does this part of my model counts as I can draw line of sight? You can draw line of sight to it.
Yeah.
You want to figure all that stuff out. That way it's not you're in the middle of a tournament game and you're like, if I make this shot, I win this game, but I don't know. And we didn't talk about it before. And so.
Yeah. No, I think, definitely have that conversation before the game. If it hasn't been explicitly clarified by the TL.
Yeah. Always communicate your intent to your opponent.
Yeah.
So I have in parentheses here things like drawing line of sight, charging. So
a big one is like base to base.
Yes, that was what I had when I meant by charging. You know, whenever I make a charge move, more often than not, I'm not going to want to base the model if I intend to kill the model, because I want that extra 3 inches of movement, or that extra 6 inches of movement, assuming the model gets killed, and then I can consolidate or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes like you'll be trying to keep two of your models like outside of 2 inches of each other so that they can't like split shots into you.
Right.
And there's going to be situations where it's like really close, even if it was your intention and you didn't say it. So there might be like a little bit of a debate there. But if you just say it while you're doing it, your opponent is going to know, like, they're not going to be like, yeah, that's okay. And then later on measure it and be like, oh, they're actually 2 inches technically. And at that point, it's like they agreed with you. Like, you're responsible for that.
Yeah. So I have for drawing line of sight, it's like there's a lot of instances where I find I'm moving a model and I want to move them in such a way that the model is obscured by like a piece of terrain, but it also has line of sight on a certain enemy model or something of that nature. And I'll literally say that verbatim as I'm moving the model. I'll literally say I want to move him in such a way that he is obscured, but I'm able to draw line of sight or whatever.
Yeah.
And then my opponent and I will look at the models, and then we'll basically like work together to try to make that happen. And then if it's just not possible, it's just not possible. But at least you're communicating with your opponent.
Yep. Agreed.
Never assume an opponent's model is obscured or unobscured. Confer with them before the shooting phase starts. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about.
Intent.
Yeah. This is just from a tactics point of view, or just like general tactics. Never go base to base when you charge into a model which you intend to kill, because of the 3-inch pile-in move and then the 3-inch consolidate move that I was talking about earlier, because that's 6 inches of free movement.
Yeah, except in situations where there's like a cybolt and you want to make sure the cybolt goes into this guy but not the other guy. But yeah, I mean, I think
so I guess this should read charge into a model which you intend to kill with the charging model. In the case that you mentioned, it's like just charging a model either to prevent that model from moving or to absorb like a cybolt or something, then you would want to go base to base.
Yeah, or at least closer. But yeah, I mean, give yourself the opportunity to make that movement in the fight phase.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, it might be beneficial to keep your opponent from being able to move in the fight phase, in which case you might want to base to base them. Like, say you charge a guy that's just barely off an objective, and you can base to base them while being on the objective. That basically ensures that they're not going to get onto it unless they kill you.
Yeah.
That's like a fringe situation, but I'm sure it'll come up pretty often. So I guess it's not fringe then. I guess I just, yeah.
Never spend command points to chase a tactics outcome. So something like rolling a d6 and having to spend a CP to trigger an effect. So I know that like Deathwatch have a tactic where it costs like 1 CP, and like on a 5-up you ignore a mortal wound. To me, that seems like in a game where you're so CP starved already. With that faction, it's borderline, but there are other factions that have abilities like that.
Yeah.
Like Mind Shackle Scarabs for Necrons.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's usually not worth it, right? But I do think like the mortal wound is one thing where it's like there's no other way for a Deathwatch to stop that. So there is like if you have the CP, it's usually worth to go for it. But yeah, I mean, like I say, tend to avoid the tactics where you spend 2 CP after a model gets taken out of action, and on a 4-up they just take a flesh wound. That's like the classic one that a lot of factions have that really isn't that worth it most of the time.
Yeah.
Maybe in like an absolutely critical moment you can justify it, but you got to be pretty desperate.
Yeah. It's like if this model dies, I lose the game. Yeah. Then I would say, yeah, sure, go ahead. This is a good one. Always assume that you will go up against Novak Necrons when list building for a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, just try and figure out the gatekeepers when you're roster building. Just make sure when you're putting models onto a roster, like you have a clear purpose. Every model is there for a certain situation, for a certain matchup. Don't just throw things on there. I mean, obviously, a lot of people they only have certain models, whatever. But yeah, if you have that freedom, then take things with purpose, right? Yeah. This model is here for this matchup. Like I've got this guy in case I have to go against, like a swarm of like Tyranid Gaunts or something. You don't want to sit across from somebody at a tournament and they put something down and you're like, oh God, I'm not at all prepared for this. What do I do?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you don't want to be that guy that prepped for everything but Custodes. And it's like, oh, forgot about that one.
God.
Well, I've been there before, right? I've had to play Custodes in a tournament and been like, oh, I really should have thought about this. I should have considered this at some point.
Yeah. Don't just go like throwing like a random Terminator onto like a Space Marines roster unless he has some sort of like actual genuine purpose. Don't just put him on there because I'm at 19 models. I don't know who to put in the 20th slot. So I'm just going to put a Terminator in there. And then when my opponent reads my roster, he'll be like, oh no, he's got a Terminator. Because it's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, there is that threat sometimes, but yeah, once in a while.
If it's not a genuine threat, then if someone calls your bluff, what do you do then? So that's all of like the general ones I have written down basically.
Okay.
And then I have some faction specific ones.
Okay.
So we'll start out with Space Marines because I have those are the ones I have the most experience with. So I have the most do's and don'ts for.
Okay.
Always have a system of tracking Salamanders rerolls if you're running the Salamander subfaction.
Yeah, and this goes for other factions too. Like there's the Death Skulls are like similar thing. Like you get the free hit roll, free wound roll, and there's some other ones I'm sure. But yeah, as a rule, you want to have something to keep track of it, just so you don't forget.
Yeah.
Like 2 separate dice that are like different from the rest, where you like keep them face up or face down, or not.
Yeah. When I'm running Salamanders, what I do is I have the dice that I actually like roll attacks and everything for, and then I have a different colored reroll hit reroll dice, and then I have a different colored wound reroll dice. So there's 3 different kinds of colored dice, and then whenever I use one, I'll put it in a different position somewhere else, like on the whiteboard or on the top or the bottom of the whiteboard or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I'll just put it in my pocket. I think that's actually a better idea. It's just putting the dice in my pocket
really
after I use it.
It's easy to forget those rerolls.
It's so easy because it's like you got so much going on in one phase, and you're like, did I use my reroll already?
Yeah.
And then you also have like the tactical reroll on top of that you may use. So it just makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Always have multiple Space Marine chapters on your command roster.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's good. I think it's elite teams specifically can really afford to take multiple subfactions because you have less models in a list, which means more options in a roster. And it just diversifies your strengths, and you can tackle more things. Like a 20-man roster that's all Blood Angels, it might not be as flexible as Blood Angels and White Scars, or Blood Angels and Black Templars, where you have like 10 of each, or 9 and 11, whatever.
Right. Never death deny when you can battle brothers instead.
Yeah, as long as it's a safe battle brothers.
Yeah.
Like you can pass a wound off on an intercessor with 2 wounds or something.
Follow up to that is always have some Primaris models in your roster.
Oh yeah,
specifically for that.
That is an actual always. If you're playing Space Marines and you build a 20-man roster and you don't have a single Primaris on there, you're in for a rude awakening when that Grey Knight player, 1,000 Suns player, pulls up across from you, and your 23-point Storm Shield is dead.
Yep.
Just like that.
Yep. It's that easy.
That's how dreams die right there. So
Yeah.
keep 2 Primaries at least.
Alternatively, don't run just Intercessors and Reavers.
Yeah, a lot of people do that.
A lot of people do it just because, you know, they're starting out in Kill Team or 40K or whatever. Those are the first models they picked up. If you're going to a tournament, don't do it, man. It's not going to be... If you do it, like, more power to you, but set your expectations very low.
Yep. I mean, if you don't have a ton of Astartes models and you're working with a limited pool, I think in general you should probably be setting your expectations pretty low, because with Astartes you need everything. There's a lot that you need.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah,
and you need to have it down to like a T.
Yeah,
like you can't just buy a couple boxes and be like, yep, this will do it. This is what I'm taking. This is what I got. I mean, you can do that, but don't expect too much.
Yeah.
I guess.
All right, so.
All right, so this next one is for Imperial Guard. Always have Godfred on your roster.
Yep. Godfred is he's just so good, and he's so like flexible. Is just like a rock that you just throw into a part of the board, and he has enough attacks that he can threaten even if he is just strength 3. I think Godfred he's a must take.
Yeah, for any like serious tournament roster at the very least. If you can't get the model from either a Blackstone Fortress box or off eBay or whatever, even then, secondhand somewhere, yeah. You can just make your own conversion. All you need is a storm shield, or is a storm shield and a power sword. Yes, those are what those weapons are called.
I've seen some really cool kit bashes for Godfrey, especially for like Sisters of Battle and stuff.
Yeah. This one is for Adeptus Mechanicus. Always mark down which canonical you've taken for each battle round.
Yeah, it is so easy to forget those. Like, I'm seeing like actual good Adamec players consistently forgetting their own canonicals, and it's just like we gotta do something, right?
You gotta figure out some sort of system of tracking those.
Well, that about wraps up the do's and don'ts of Kill Team. If you guys enjoyed listening to this episode of the Command Point podcast, go ahead and leave a rating on whatever podcast app you're listening on. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you all in the next one. Thanks for listening.